Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's session. My name is Danny, and I'm the event planner for the New York Reactor Space. Before we start, I have a few things to go over. Please take a moment to read our code of conduct. We seek to provide a respectful environment for both our audience and presenters. We encourage engagement in the chat, but please be mindful of your commentary, remain professional, and on topic. Useful links will be shared in the chat. The session is recorded and will be available on demand 24 to 48 hours on the Microsoft Reactor YouTube channel. Which brings us to today's session. It'll run for approximately 1 hour with time for questions throughout. I will now turn it over to our speaker for introductions.
Hey everybody, this is it. This is the last live stream for the hackathon, but the hacking is not over. This is the Microsoft Fabric and AI Learning Hackathon final session for the live stream series, How to Submit and Prepare for Ignite 2024. And I'm joined again by my amazing colleague, Jasmine Greenway, if you'd like to introduce.
Hi, everybody. We're back. We were here in the beginning, and now we're here at the end to guide you through.
That is right. And we are very excited to see what is coming. Now, of course, we want to make sure that you are all prepared for the submission process that is, of course, coming in the next 5 days. And by the way, as we're going through this live stream, I want to mention Josh Menge from our team is tuned in from Kenya. We'll be answering questions for folks as they arise. And I know there's a lot of reasons why you might want to ask a question. Does my project fit a certain category? Maybe you're facing a gnarly issue and you're wondering where to get help. We'll be able to provide you with answers for everything you need, hopefully, by the end of this session. So, of course, the most important thing is these deadlines that are looming. So we do have a November 12th submission deadline. And the thought process here, we want to give you that final weekend to be able to put the tightening on the screws and the last hammering on your projects. And also, we know that many of you see Monday as a holiday. So we're going to push that to Tuesday as being the submission deadline. Then, because we're experiencing, I'd say, quite a few participants in this hackathon. I think we're at, Jasmine, last I checked, I think it was this morning, 4,500 plus attendees in this hackathon. And if they all submit projects, we might even need even more time. But to be safe, we're going to go ahead and announce our winner on December 16th, which means that as soon as those submissions cross the line on the 12th, that creates the holiday season for Jasmine and I and the rest of our judges to go through and open all the wonderful gifts and presents that you will be providing in the forms of your project submissions. And we cannot wait to see it. So stay tuned for that. And of course, as we get near that date, expect that we'll have a blog post similar to what we did in the previous hackathon, where we'll go through the top winners and, of course, pick out some of our honorable mentions and favorites that we encountered during the judging process. Now, for those of you who are still wanting to continue learning, I'm happy to share that all of our sessions have been recorded. This one included will be live. I believe it'll be live right after we're done here in just a few moments on the Power BI YouTube channel. So there's a short link. You can either scan the QR code or go to aka.ms/PBI YouTube. And you can find the videos there under the live. There will be a tab there, an option you can choose. And as you can see, we went through quite a bit. Jasmine, I know you were involved in almost half of these sessions in some way, shape, or form. So I'll ask you, what was your favorite so far?
Oh, you can't put that on me, Paul. They're all great. I mean, I think they all have really exciting demos, and it's really great inspiration for all of you who are out there building. Me, myself, I'm also looking forward to the holiday season to build a little bit more and also be inspired by the projects that I see. But we highly recommend that you check out all the sessions.
And I guess we'll kick that to the audience then. If you had a particular favorite, and if you liked them all, you can share that as well. Please let us know which ones you enjoyed here. I do feel like this was how can I say, quite a sampling across the product. I mean, we're looking at Gen AI experiences, which of course is the hot big thing in tech in general. Looking at real-time intelligence, getting into things like AI with data factory. Like, who thought you'd see those two words together? And when you watch the sessions, like, I learned so much there. I'm like, wow, I may not ever have to write a line of code again when manipulating and transforming data, which is, I welcome that. Of course, looking at SQL DB, Cosmos DB, and PostgreSQL databases. So that's interesting. And of course, those map to our categories, as you'll see. And of course, looking at the data warehouse session that came through yesterday, which was really exciting. And of course, we're going to move into the final session here and tell you all about how to prepare for MS Ignite. And that should say 2024. I don't know why it says 2025. Okay, so first and foremost, most important thing, as part of participating in the hackathon, it's not just building, it's also learning. And we do ask that you complete an online learning challenge. Now I'm going to go through a few of the things I just showed there because I was so excited I didn't bring up the web pages here. So of course, the hackathon, which commences in 5 days, is of course on DevPost. Most of you probably know that. If you haven't been there yet, you can come here, find all of the rules, guidelines, as well as the submission form that's going to be required. And we'll go through that in a bit more detail as we go on. Of course, if you want to continue learning, here's that link to the Power BI YouTube channel that we discussed. If you click here in the live tab, you should find the names of those sessions. You can sort of map them over here. But there's also other sessions here too that we did not do as part of the hackathon you could probably learn from as well.
Including,
yes.
I was going to say, including also our previous iteration of our Fabric Hackathon, Hack Together. You can also go back into archives and see what we talked about there.
That's right. And you could see how things have changed. Like, I recall back then we didn't have as many AI things going on. We were kind of trying to figure out what are the AI things you could do during that hackathon. And now we're at the nexus of applying those things and a lot of the feedback that came through there. So step one here, as I mentioned, is that completing of the learning content. And if you go through the instructions, it'll mention here for requirements, complete the Microsoft Learn AI Skills Challenge Microsoft Fabric Edition. And if you click into that, that's going to bring you to here. Now, some of y'all might be disappointed to see this because you're like, I was going to finish this and it says the challenge ended on November 1st. Don't fear. You can still complete this and you can still be eligible for submitting your projects. If you do click on the Start Learning button here, that will then bring you into a page that shows you a full collection of the modules that were in here while it was active. So if you do need to still complete those, you can do that here, and you can also track the overall progress as you see. So we want to see that light up to 100%. Once you've done that, there will be a field, and I'm skipping a little bit ahead, but there will be a field in the additional info section when submitting your project that's going to ask you what did you complete, yes or no, what email did you use, and provide the Learn usernames for your team if you did work in a team. And we'll, of course, go through this in much more detail as we get to that section. But hopefully that all makes sense. And don't feel discouraged if you do arrive there and you see that the challenge is ended. We are still accepting those submissions as we go forward. And from what I understand, the reason for that is, and we're going to talk about this too, is Ignite is coming and there's going to be another challenge. And I imagine that if you enter that challenge, you may already have completed most of what's there. So we do encourage you to sign up and participate there. And I'm not completely certain what rewards are being offered there, but stay tuned for more details. So, of course, the first part to think about before submitting is aligning your project to our submission and judging criteria. Specifically, step number one, of course, is deciding which category you want to submit to. And I will go ahead and say, if you do feel strongly that you can submit into multiple categories, you can do multiple submissions. I do believe that is allowed. So you'll want to make sure you look at your project, what you've built. Hopefully that was built by first looking at the categories, so you already kind of have an idea there. Select that from there. What we're going to be looking at as judges is the innovation and impact. So what's the real world relevance And what's the problem you're solving? Is it clearly defined? And would this help others? And I'm curious if you have anything to add there, Jasmine. I know based on our previous hackathon, we might have some examples there we could show of solutions, because this looks very similar to that criteria.
Yeah, so in the last hackathon, we saw a lot of solutions across various kind of use cases, from agriculture to personal health to even, I know we saw a lot of career focused ones. A lot of ones focused around resume building, interviewing, things like that. A lot of things that we are all as people kind of thinking of today, and things that affect our daily lives, things that are practical things that we approach as just people in living our lives.
I agree. And you could tell a lot of the best projects were when someone put their personal interest into the project, or was solving something they cared about personally, like innately. So I definitely would say, like, it's like the age-old adage, if you do what you love, it doesn't feel like work. You're going to enjoy that process of building if you tie it to something that you love dearly in life. And of course, we love to see those kinds of projects shine through here. We do have a question that pops through here. What's the frontier between real-time and other categories? And do my best to kind of address that here. As mentioned, and as you are all aware, there are many workloads in Fabric, and a lot of the ways to build an interesting solution is not by focusing necessarily on one, but saying, how can I use these in concert together to do something exciting and interesting? So for example, with real-time, I know in all of the database focused categories, for Postgres, for Cosmos, for SQL, we do mention the mirroring capability, which from what I understand is something that can be ingested in the real-time intelligence experience. So it's very possible you could make that headway into sort of doing both real-time while also sort of adhering to the database criteria that's presented here as well. And I think what that necessarily means, Victor, is if you're wanting to do actions on data that's in flight, in motion, in real time, bring it and add it into any of those other workloads. And of course, we can't wait to see what combinations individuals are going to produce there. Ashish Soni is asking, hey, I missed the November 1st deadline. Can I still submit? The short answer to that is absolutely yes. And I will show very briefly one more time around. If you go to the page, you'll see that it mentions the challenge did end. If you click on Start Learning, that will bring you to a page where you can see the modules that are required to be completed, as well as being able to track that progress. And we do want to see 100% progress there. And finally, you'll have a step in the submission process that's going to ask you, did you complete it? What email did you use? And provide the names. And we'll use that to verify, not necessarily that you completed the challenge itself while it was active, but those modules that are involved in the challenge. So you will be A-OK to proceed if you have not completed that step yet. So don't fret there. We do want to be admissible for those situations. Up next, the documentation and reproducibility. And I will allude to, and we'll show this when we go into a more deeper dive of that submission process we just showed. But is the solution clearly documented in a GitHub repo that makes it easy for others to follow along and reproduce your solution? And Jasmine, I'll let you speak to that. I mean, the importance, right, of being able to not just build something, but make it usable for others, and why this is so important.
Yeah, we're really looking for what, whys, and hows of your project, right? You do cover a lot of the, why and how in the video submission, which is the next thing that we're going to talk about. But documentation also is just always key for any solution that you build, especially if it's something that you want to continue building on, especially if you're working on a team, especially something that you want to pass on for others to kind of grow. So, I mean, this is really helping you, right? Set yourself up for success to continue building on this, if this is something for you. And also for us as judges to have a clear understanding, because, the video is great. Video submissions are great, but also being able to read, especially, Paul and I as developers, reading the documentation, understanding where you're coming from, understanding the choices that you made in building your solution, helps us understand as judges where you're coming from and the solutions. And also is a really great way to kind of see how you all are using these various Fabric workloads and Azure technologies and AI technologies.
Yeah, well said, Jasmine. And, it reminds me, I know we're all at most points in our life, we're learners. And when you have something cool to show, that's great. But what's really awesome is when you inspire the next person to be able to say, hey, I really like what was done here. I want to do it too. And I think that's kind of what we're asking here. And in addition, I can also say too, from a product standpoint, having these things well documented means like, our engineering teams and folks like that will be able to necessarily take a look at how these solutions are being implemented. And that can help guide the product development in the future as well. So definitely paying strong attention here. I want to call that out, that we will be looking at that very, very closely. You could be solving the coolest problem ever, but if you're not telling us how you did it and you're not necessarily enabling others to do the same, we would likely pick a different project that was doing that if it came down to it. So want to call that out here. For video demonstration, this is a really important piece, and for multiple reasons. Not only does it allow us to see your project in action and give you that sort of ability to talk to it, speak to it, make it live, make it shareable. I mean, this is that aspect. I know sometimes, like, I think to my parents when they say, what do you do here? I don't know that showing them a GitHub repo ever really sells the story. But sometimes if I show them, oh, here's a video of the thing that we're doing, it really can help increase the exposure, I think, for the work you're creating. And that's one of the goals we want to see here. We want to see people, as part of this journey, being in this hackathon and learning, that you're taking this and you're creating concepts and opportunities for yourself as a result. And I think video format is great for that. In addition, these will make it very easy when we go to publication of the winners to be able to share out and really visualize to our audience that's going to want to read about these and see these. They're going to see your product and project in action. Now, I will say here too, we don't want to necessarily, automatically throw more points necessarily to the best produced video. We want to look at, it's more the content and the intent here. And then that's not to say don't come with a camera crew if that's what you decide to do for this. But I do want to level set here and say that we're going to try to be very pragmatic in terms of how we compare the quality and knowing what, recording equipment may be accessible to others and not to others. We do want to ensure this is a level playing field here. And Jasmine, do you have anything to add here just on the video piece? I know you kind of alluded to this in the previous question, but anything additional to add?
Yeah, that's perfect. I think it kind of goes in alignment with what I was talking about, just documentation and video and kind of how that kind of shapes the whole story, no matter what the video, the production quality of the video is, or, also to Paul's point, just having just the various tools that we have for editing videos and creating them. It's not something that's not part of the judging criteria. What we're really looking at is like, how are you clarifying your message? How are you bringing the message through in your video?
And of course, I think it goes without saying, not a bad idea to put a link to your video demonstration in your GitHub repo. Mm-hmm. That just, boom, I know there's a lot of repos there where if I see too much text, I go, oh, I'll save that for later. But if there's a video there, I'm usually like, oh, I have to do this. I'm going to do this now. So I definitely encourage you to put that just for the additional motivational factor that can bring. Moving along, I do want to speak a little bit to the prizes. Of course, we do have an all-up grand prize. This is the best of the best. So this could technically apply to any of the categories that if you submit a project, you're technically eligible for competition in this category. And this is the one that we would say, out of all 4,500 plus of our participants, which one, given our panel of judges that we decide, this is the one we want to put all the focus and attention to and reward with the highest honor of grand prize. Mm-hmm. And this will include, of course, additional cash, so an extra $1,000 as we compare these, $2,500 total, social media recognition. You'll be featured in a Microsoft blog post following the winner announcements. And of course, you'll be eligible for that badge that all participants will receive for participating in the hackathon.
This one's always a tough one. This is a tough one. The last hackathon we had. So yeah, and so to Paul's point, like when you select a category, you're essentially applying for two at least. So you're going for the category you chose and the grand prize. Speaking on just like criteria, kind of going back to last slide and the last the prize. Victor Hugo has another question here. He asks, for the video solution, should we focus on problem solution, technical process, code, or visualizations in Power BI, for example?
This is a great question. And I'll say that the quick answer is it's actually open to your interpretation with which you feel is going to best portray your project. That said, I'll give a few pointers here. If you can land in 5 to 7 minutes, and I'll reuse your words here, Victor, laying out the problem and the solution, showing us how you technically achieve that, and allowing us to visualize what that end result is of the analysis, I think that would be the full sell here. The challenging part, of course, is how do you plan and compact that in the 5 to 7 minutes? And that's going to be there's no real one size fits all for that. I think it's going to depend on the scope of the solutions that we're getting here. But I would say, and I'm thinking to the solutions we got last year, Jasmine, one of the reasons we chose the winner of the grand prize that we did was a combination of their video was straightforward and to the point of how they solved it. And it was really creative. It was actually a team from Skopje, Macedonia, and they used AI voice to voice over their video, which we found that really interesting because when we actually met them in person, they mentioned that they did this because they wanted to just have an extra sprinkle of AI, and they thought it would, but better allow it to be understood, as English wasn't necessarily their primary language. But it was the adherence to, they really succinctly put everything into that time frame. And also, I would say, the specific problem that they solved. And if you are interested in learning more about that and other submissions, we do have on the Fabric blog, there is a post. You can search this one. Unfortunately, my chat copy paste isn't working at the moment, but there is an announcing the winners of Hack Together, and you can sort of see some of those examples. I would definitely say, if you're looking for how should my video look, just going more specific to your question, Victor, take a look at some of the top entries here. And even in the honorable mentions, there are a few we added in here, I would say almost purely because we thought their video was awesome and needed to be seen. So definitely use that as an extra motivator on how you can eventually land in the write-up that we will produce based on the winners. Anything additional to add here, Jasmine, before we move on?
No, I don't think so. We can keep going.
Excellent, excellent. So for the category prizes, these will also be sizable. We'll have the $1,500 USD, and this is for each. So this is not for all. This is for each. Each will have a $1,500 award attached to it, and those will attach to the best Fabric AI innovation, the best use of real-time intelligence in Fabric, best Azure database for PostgreSQL integration, best SQL and AI integration, and best Azure Cosmos DB plus Microsoft Fabric integration. And I feel like this would be a great time, if anyone has very specific questions to your project that you feel we can answer in the time frame here. This is a great place where I think we can park to that, and also maybe consult the actual official rules if needed in order to make a clarification. So we'll turn it to the audience for a moment here. If you do have any questions about, how can I better, maneuver my project to fit into a specific category, etc., we'll be happy to answer those questions. So we'll give just a moment to see if any of those are coming through. I know there's quite a few folks in the chat, so maybe taking some time to type up there. And yeah, I want to say too, I think we were told before we joined, Jasmine, there's something like 600 individuals registered for the session, which is exciting. And we know there's people from all over the world. So some of our participants are definitely sleeping at the moment, and we'll probably be catching the long tail. Okay, excellent. Here we go. King Slayer. Is a project on football prediction viable for the category of best SQL and AI integration?
Yeah, I mean, there's a bunch of ways that you can approach that, right? This could be, are you like accessing a database? Also, Americans, so I'm assuming you're meaning soccer or American football, either or, right? There's probably a place where you can get, data on past stats and things like that. Perfect for something like Fabric, right? Or even loading that into something like SQL. There's so many tools to migrate tabular data or just any data really into SQL using Data Factory, Data Migrator, all these other things. And then applying that use of AI, right? We have access to, or we provide access to the OpenAI endpoint for you, which we'll get to later. But also thinking about just notebook experience, building your own thing, building something super custom in notebooks. Many ways to approach that. So to answer your question, Kingslayer, yes, that sounds like a cool project. Can't wait for you to submit it. We also have another question by Victor. A graph recommender system. Ooh, the chat is moving. A graph recommender system would fit more into AI innovation or Cosmos DB. This is a good question. I mean, AI innovation sounds like that sounds like a great fit, but Cosmos DB also has some ways for you to apply design patterns for something like that. So that would be like really kind of down up to you. And then Paul also mentioned that you have the opportunity to submit to multiple categories, but just keep in mind that Paul walked through the form there, and he'll probably we'll walk through that in a little bit more detail. Is that you're gonna have to make 2 submissions, right? Because the drop down, you select one category, and then you have to like make another submission there. So just keep that in mind. I don't think there's a multi-select thing there. And yes, Alvaro commented a Portuguese soccer team was using real-time intelligence as well. That's actually a great point, right? Just capturing just live stats through something like the real-time intelligence workload. That sounds really really fun. So even from down to like your local football league, you're building something for your team so that you can capture stuff, or have some friends who can't make the game, but they want to they want to see how you're doing. That's a great way. And then SB asks, can wireframes be submitted and recorded if we are product professionals with great ideas but limited coding background? What do you think, Paul?
I'd say absolutely. And I think even in our honorable mentions from last year, we actually had a couple of those sort of make the cut that were of that variety, I would say. And the reason I chose those is I really liked the attitude of the teams, because they said, you know what, I may not be strong in this area, but I'm going to use my strengths to build something regardless. And I think seeing that was very inspirational, and we wanted to highlight that. So I would say absolutely. That's not a deal breaker here. We want to be, we don't want this to be a grueling experience. We want this to be an exciting and happy, flourishing experience for everybody involved here. So yes, take your best skill sets, and if those are what you want to bring to the forefront, we want to see that. And I think that could be really interesting. I mean, if you're able to visualize and display something, communicate an idea, I don't see how you're very far from at that point at the end of this. If you wanted to really see it through, that could be the value that you get out of this hackathon. Is I got this really great idea. I'm ready to make it come to life now. And that's because I participated. So 100%. And I want to mention too, back to Victor's question on the Cosmos DB. I know this is pitched by the product team there as the database for AI. So I would say the more you like, number one, if your data is just coming from Cosmos, then of course you're aligned to the Cosmos category. But if you're using some of the more advanced features, and Jasmine, I don't know if you want to expose on those or go into some of those that they could choose, but some of the more AI-centric focused features that are now available on Cosmos, I feel like that would really make that entry very strong for that particular category.
Oh yeah, of course. So first thing that comes to mind is I'm sure you all are familiar with the dawn of, or just the influx of different ways to create embeddings through vector databases. And so the Cosmos DB SQL API, as well as NoSQL API, as well as the Mongo DB vCore API does offer you some options there. Another thing, and also if you are using the other two databases, Postgres, SQL, those also have vector capabilities. In fact, the vector function and vector capabilities in SQL and AI just went public preview, I believe, yesterday. It was an early adopter preview for a while. So now it's there. So you can just definitely check that out. And then Postgres as well via the PG vector, and also has an Azure, and I think an Azure AI integration there as well too. So lots of ways. Actually, all of these have some integration with Azure AI, OpenAI, Azure AI Search. If you were thinking about doing some additional like hybrid searching, there's a lot of options here.
And we may not have listed them all here because I know some of these announcements were like recent, but I think like to give you the tip, if you know that there's a feature that's in your favorite database that perhaps you're building your solution around, because I do recognize that is a common theme here, and it'll make sense in 2 weeks why maybe we did this, hint hint. But I would definitely say, speaking specifically for Cosmos DB, like if you're using a new disk ANN service, like any of these things that you're sort of lighting up there that are showing, I didn't just use the database to store data. I used some key feature that this database has that sets it aside from the others to accomplish a task. That's what's going to throw you into the, whoa, we really need to consider this one in the prize running. So for those categories specifically, I would definitely suggest do the research to sort of look into what is actually available there that could make you light up yet another feature specific to that database.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and another thing that to keep in mind, just on the category of just hackathon prize and category judging, is that our product teams are in these are judges, and so they're curious what people are doing with Fabric and their products. So you have people just like within Microsoft who are building these things as you build with them, who are curious about how you're using it. And I think this also goes into another question here in the chat from Paul. He talks about how, if my hackathon project turns into, next idea essentially turns into, something that you want to continue building on, create like a business around, do I keep bragging rights and full creative control and maybe even turn it into a future licensable product? Yeah, we don't own your project. You are submitting it as a project for a hackathon winner. And I think that's just additional bragging rights if you turn this into a product, and also just great for both of us, right? Like you use all these cool features and you were able to, really make something really tangible and impactful to your particular customer base. So to answer your question, yeah, that's totally yours, Paul.
Yeah, and I want to say there too, that's what makes us so happy as judges here is we're like, wow, because we put this hackathon on, that project was built, which went on to do that thing. The part that we retain is the joy of seeing these things flourish and become successful, as well as, to be very specific, we will have some aspect of the story of it, where that came from. It came from that hackathon. So we would definitely share that aspect. I see Paul's followed up here again. If my project workflow relies on a Fabric notebook to transform a Power BI data set into vector embeddings for Azure AI Search, is there an alternative you'd suggest if notebooks aren't allowed?
So this question depends on how you're really using. So if this is coming from like a database, let's see. I'm trying to think. I think notebooks are allowed in every category except I believe Cosmos DB. So if you're trying to work with vector embeddings or just specifically Azure AI Search, I think your categories you might want to consider are the ones that are just everything except Azure Cosmos DB. I don't know if I have any. Do you have any other input there, Paul?
I would say, and even though it's, I wouldn't say it's necessarily excluded from Cosmos. It's just not called out, and that was specific. So I would say that for Cosmos, if you were looking for a solution to achieve that, again, looking at something that you could call from pipelines or data flows is preferred there. And this was prescriptive guidance given to us by the product team for what projects they would want to see. So I'll try to give you the hint here of Jasmine and I can tell you how we might judge a project, and we can hint at you how we feel that the product teams will. And you can best glean that from the specific wording here. And the reason I say that is because they were all written jointly with the product teams and the judges, I would say the additional judges for those categories. Of course, not everything existed at that time. So the hint I would give you personally is if something was announced since the start of this hackathon on September 12th to now, that's probably a cool thing to use. I wouldn't say anything's necessarily barred, but there were things they were looking at the time we kicked this off, and we did have to lock it in at that point. Great question from King Slayer. How will the project be judged based on an amount of data used or how accurate it is? What are the judgment points for more clarity? This one, I'm going to go ahead and say is more of a, how can I say, soft. It really comes down, what we really, really care about first and foremost is not necessarily the size of the data, but of course, if we saw that you're using terabytes or petabytes of data, that would of course come into consideration as like, wow, this solution is, enterprise grade at this point. If you did, we may weigh a little towards that, but I'm not going to say that that's the differentiator. I think what really matters here is what is the problem being solved and does it solve it clearly? So you also mentioned here how accurate it is. We're not all necessarily domain experts for where I think some of the projects will lie. So we will take into account what we see in your repo and from your source code to validate that what you're saying does look and appear accurate to us. We won't necessarily go through scientific rigor because there's just too many submissions to go through there. But for clarity, I would say we're more focused on what you're solving and how you're solving it than the peculiarities of, say, the data set or the size of it or the accuracy, whether it's like scientifically valid. We'll assume that it's reasonably sound when we look at your GitHub repo.
I see Paul also expanded on his question here. If the data source is Cosmos DB, but embedding are made from Power BI data sets using a Fabric notebook, is that excluded? There's multiple ways to connect a data source to a notebook. And so I think, just knowing that the category criteria does not specifically, as Paul mentioned, does not specifically call out notebooks. One consideration here is that you could use mirroring as your data source from Cosmos DB to pull that into a notebook, just to be kind of check off boxes there, I would say.
So yeah, Paul, I think what we want to say here is it's not necessarily what the product team had suggested they were looking for when we drafted that category, but it doesn't mean it would be excluded. Mm-hmm. So if that kind of helps you there. I again would say, looking back at the overall judging, like not in the tiny format, but expanded, if the problem you're solving is interesting enough and it happens to use a notebook, we're definitely going to consider it if the problem being solved is more interesting than, say, the nuance of how you solved it.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Additional questions before we move on? Will be, I'll give kind of like a 1 minute sort of warning for if you want to get those in. And we'll be happy to answer as many that come in this next minute, but we will go ahead and move forward. If not, I know it could take some time to type, so we'll just be patient here. Okay, excellent. If it does come in and I missed it, we'll try to take time for those additional questions at the end. So now on to the next, what I would say most important part. We talked about this a bit earlier. This is obviously a result of our judging criteria, how we get here. But to submit, if you're wondering what's the checklist, what do I need to have, what's the most important things? I would say for us as judges, the most important thing is having a URL to a code repository for judging and testing, including a 3 to 5. You can go slightly over that too. I know we're using that as the guidance here. If it goes to 7 minutes, it could go to 20 minutes. It doesn't mean we'll have time to watch all of it, but just understand that that's kind of the sweet spot here. A video submission included, and of course, completion of the Microsoft Learn AI Skills Challenge, which we sort of discussed a couple times earlier. And what that process looks like, we'll go ahead and walk through that. So if you as a participant are enrolled in the hackathon, the step number 1 would be to go to create project. Then you're going to have to prove that you're a human. And they gave me a tough one, so bear with me. I hope we get this right. Is that a crosswalk on the bottom right? Is it? Oh boy, they got me. Verify once none are left. Oh, they're giving me the super hard one today. Oh, not again. Motorcycles. Oh, wow. I hope you are all laughing at home. Okay, perfect. So now we're in. And it's probably because I've done that a few times today. All of the ones I got before were far simpler than that. But the project name, elevator pitch, these typically go into, I know for DevPost, they actually like catalog the hackathons. They're usually searchable long after the fact. In fact, I've seen projects that I worked on over 10 years ago, so still here. And you could find them by the project name and the elevator pitch to kind of know if you want to jump in and learn more. So this is kind of, this section I would say is how this will get organized and cataloged into the DevPost archives for eternity. For the project overview, this will, oh, sorry, that was the project overview. Before you would jump into that, if you are participating as a team, there's an ability to add your teammates here into the submission. And there's also this interesting feature here, the secret invite link. So if you send this to somebody and they click it, they will be added into your team. It's like use that with, I guess, be aware. If you publicly posted that somewhere, the whole world could technically join your team. So just be aware that there are 2 ways to do that. You can either add the email where they'll accept or give them the magic link to click, which will opt them in. Project overview, as I mentioned, will get you categorized in the catalog of all projects for eternity on DevPost. Project details, this is where if you were to click into those catalog projects, it's going to tell you more about the project. I would recommend here, if you think about this, you're going to be creating a GitHub repo. It's not a bad idea that if you're building out the repo and you're building out the README over there, if it's well written and well crafted enough, you very well could copy and paste that into here. However, you also have the additional room for if there's a story you want to tell us about this hackathon, like, the idea came to me on a stormy night. For some reason, I was looking out the window and I saw my cat on the fence and I decided I wanted to monitor that in real time utilizing Fabric, right? Whatever that happens to be, you can add that in here to add a little bit of touch of color and character. We are asking for the technologies used to build with. This is important because it'll help us filter. And I will say too, it's very possible you could submit for a category, but we as judges go, there's maybe a significant tiebreaker involved. We could consult this area to really pick, I guess, different details out. So I'll say that's very important here. Tried out links is the actual link to the repo. I'm going to say that's extremely important. That's one of the 3 things we definitely need here in the video. Equally as important, you want to have that video submission come along. Then the additional info part, this is kind of the make sure which, whether you're submitting as an individual, team, or organization, give your team a name if you want, and we'll refer to you as that, of course, as we go forward with marketing comms or blog posts that we may be writing about the hackathon. indicating whether you're in a territory or geographic region that is able to participate. There are some restrictions, as you may be aware. Country of residence, this will help us because it helps us determine the prize distribution. If we need to do that in USD, or perhaps you're in EU, maybe we do that in euros, etc. Of course, here is the section we looked at earlier. Did you complete the Microsoft challenge? You want to answer yes here. Provide the email that was used and the usernames for any additional team members that may have been involved. This question is interesting. It does ask if this is a new project. Did it exist prior to September 24th? And it's a little confusing because we kicked off the hackathon on September 12th. So I would just answer this to the best of your ability. I think what we're trying to drill into here is, was this a net new project created for this hackathon, or was this rehashed from something? And of course, I think we're going to be able to tell that, by looking at the age of the repository, the age of the video that's sent over, and that sort of thing. But do make sure you answer that. But I will tell you, Jasmine and I looked at this yesterday, and we were like, I don't know why they chose that date, other than it is coincidentally my birthday. But I don't think that's the reason why. What category? Here you'll submit, and you can choose one here. And if you do need to make an additional submission, you would need to go through the process and select the additional. Here we ask you very specifically how you use any of the available co-pilots. And the reason why is we know that in the free trial offer, which we assume many and probably the majority of participants are using, are not going to have access to all of those features. But still, as users of the product and fans of the product ourselves, we want to know how you're utilizing that. That feedback is very valuable to us, just in terms of knowing what kind of problems can be solved with this, and also may help guide the future direction of the product if we learn new ways it's being used that we did not necessarily consider. Again, you'll reshare the URL to the GitHub repo here, and then we'll ask you, will we have permission to use your hackathon to develop accelerators and learn material for Microsoft? That means, let's say you built something that truly is an end-to-end tutorial. It gets me from point A to point B to solve a problem using Fabric's services. Maybe you're really proud of that, and there's not necessarily a secret sauce that you want to keep for yourself to become, the next billion-dollar idea. Let us know, because we might actually be interested in taking the concepts and using that to develop the next set of, say, learn materials that would be presented in a future Cloud Skills Challenge.
Yeah, I mean, really, at the end of the day, it's another way to win. Having your stuff.
Great way to put it. Yes.
Yeah.
So I guess an additional way to enter yourself into yet another category that technically, I guess we're only limited by our ability to implement them all. And I hope you overwhelm us. So please answer yes to that if you feel inclined to. And of course, are you a member, an employee of Microsoft? And if you are, I will ask you, please, or definitely answer this question honestly. And the reason why is we want to reserve our prize awards for non-Microsoft employees. So we do want to try to identify here. It'll help us fast track our judging, if need be. So do answer that question honestly. But the reason why is because we do want folks who are not employed at Microsoft to be eligible for the prizes, and those who are employees to be ineligible. Make that very, very clear. So you can participate, and we want you to, if you are a Microsoft employee, but you will not be eligible for a cash award. Awesome. So with that said, if there's not any questions, hopefully that was clear. We'll move into where you can get support from here on out for the hackathon. So you've likely already stumbled across these. Jasmine and I pitched both of the resources we'll show here at our kickoff call. So you've probably been using these, but community.fabric.microsoft.com, highly recommend. Go ahead, hop over there, register. Inside of here, you can jump in. Not only can you go into the forums and get this 24-hour support for any of the available workloads in Fabric, but there's also additional areas here too. Like maybe you can find a local Fabric user group where you can go to present your hackathon locally if one happens to exist there. And of course, we'll talk about this one later, the Career Hub, where you can continue your learning journey if you're inclined to building a career out of utilizing services like Microsoft Fabric. Additionally, we have the DevPost Discord, where, again, You can chat live with the judges, organizers. So if you have questions that weren't answered here, you can do that there. Both Jasmine and I are very active. In fact, Jasmine, I know some of the attendees here have probably attended some of the office hours you've provided there. And furthermore, we're still getting lots of questions even to today. You can ask your questions here as well. I'd say the difference between these, if you're more familiar with the chat immediate IM format and want to speak directly to the judges, Discord is going to get you there. If you're looking for, oh my gosh, I need an expert somewhere in the world to help me with this problem, they're all here. Might not be as quick of a response, but do expect that you'll see something if you do post over there. And I do believe the response times are like 48 hours. Don't quote me on that, but I believe that is the case. So if you have questions, figure them out soon so you can get those questions before the weekend starts. And interesting. We got a question from SB. Before I dive into the slide, we'll address that. So this wild, you know about when the next AI-centric will be scheduled? The next one being scheduled soon, as this hackathon started in September, and I've lost time. I'm going to defer here to, we called this out earlier. If you find the Power BI YouTube channel, there's not necessarily a AI-centric, I'm going to assume what you mean by this, like live stream or content, etc. We don't have a future one planned, as this is the last live stream in the series, but you can go back and see the previous AI-centric live streams that include the supercharging AI with data warehouse, building AI-powered solutions with Cosmos DB. In fact, I think I'm going to go out on a limb and say every single one of these sessions had some AI component to them. So yes, I would just say go back in time for those if you need those, SB. Cool. So finally, the journey you've been on here up to this point is likely very much setting you up for success in a data analytics role. And we have resources for that. On the Fabric community site, there is the Career Hub page. And this goes into a little more details of how you can like go further along in this journey. And what I mean by that is, you can participate in the hackathon. You can also schedule yourself for, say, taking an exam certification to get an official certification in Fabric. There's also specific forums here where people talk about career advice, find out about ongoing Fabric analytics in a day, and even jump into learn rooms with, I think, some of our Microsoft MVPs, where they'll kind of give you like one-on-one tutorship, essentially, on how to understand some of the concepts in Fabric to assist you in certification. So definitely a great place to go here. Jasmine, did you have anything to add here for the Career Hub?
No, not really. I mean, at this point, like, you build a solution. I mean, this is the next step. You might as well just, go ahead and dive right in.
I agree. I feel like once you've gone through the practicum of I've used the software and built something, you're ready. Like that's the point. That is literally, to me, that's the biggest test and example that you have the skill set to do this. So in our last call to action here, Microsoft Ignite is coming, not next week, but the week after. So this will be November 19th through 21st. And it takes place in person in Chicago. But the cool thing here, if you go to aka.ms/ignite, you can register online to attend. It's free, 100% free to attend virtually online. You can register at the link shown here. And what's really cool here too, most of you, there's sessions all over the board. There's AI-centric sessions. In fact, I'll scroll through the topics here: modern work, business application, infrastructure, apps, etc. There's a session catalog here, and Jasmine and I were looking at this yesterday, and we kind of came up with what would be the most applicable, I think, for people attending this hackathon. Is you can actually refine by will it be recorded, which means it will be available online. Is it in the data, topic? And inside of here, you can find a whole slew of sessions. And I think the one we wanted to call attention to, of course, is Microsoft Fabric, what's new, what's next? Of course, probably the most important one here. And I will just tell you, you will. This whole hackathon will make so much more sense if you attend this session. You will see why we chose some of the things we did. Not to give away what's coming out there, but I will hope to see everyone there. And for folks that are there for the in-person experience, what's really exciting, we do have a cool video I wanted to share here. I'll go ahead and run this of one of the experiences we'll be offering in person. So for folks who might have the privilege to be able to attend.
This November at Ignite, reach out to the Real-Time Intelligence booth because we have a challenge for you. We deployed a racing simulator so you can compete to see who's the fastest driver at Ignite. The challenge is to get in the car and set the fastest lap time. But it doesn't stop there. We are shipping the telemetry data directly to Microsoft Fabric so you can be more than a driver. Thanks to our real-time dashboards, you can also be an on-track engineer, understanding the telemetry data and helping the driver improve their lap time. You want to be a team principal? We got you covered. Use Power BI to analyze the data post-race and help your driver improve their performance. We want you to experience how you can use Microsoft Fabric Real-Time Intelligence to get your business to the next level. From product requirements to architecture to implementation, we can help you build a solution that will give you the edge over the competition. See you at Ignite.
Hopefully that inspires y'all. If you are in person, Jasmine and I will be in the area where there will be a real live racing simulator ongoing there that you can participate in, and there will be prizes as well, I believe. So with that said, we are nearing the end of the time. Hopefully you were excited both about the weekend to finally finish your projects, as well as the upcoming Ignite conference that will be taking place online, where you'll be able to learn the latest and greatest, and I guarantee you it's very exciting features coming to Microsoft Fabric. And with that said, we are now at the end of our session. We can wish you luck here. We're looking forward to seeing what you build. And we'll just give the last few minutes. If there's any questions coming in, we'll try to take on one or two more if we can. Jasmine, any parting words here for all of our hackathon attendees before we sign off?
No, not really. Just good luck, and we're excited for you, and just don't forget the deadline.
Don't forget the deadline. That's great. That's the one right there. So I see Victor's got another question here. I noticed that in DP600, this is referring to the Fabric data analytics engineer or data analytics certification. Sorry. Question: there's a lot related to Power BI and DAX optimization. Is that correct? There is a lot of questions, yes, that are going to hover on that topic. I would definitely say for the prep, we have a number of exam prep and readiness materials and practice exams that will not only expose you to those types of questions, but the other types that are available there. I wouldn't say it's necessarily a deal breaker. Like, this is something you can learn, and it is feasible to do. But I know sometimes when people see DAX, they get scared. But yes, I would definitely recommend look at our readiness materials that are out there. Some of the Angie Rudick has done a ton of certification prep content. I believe it's on the Power BI YouTube channel that we showed earlier. So definitely check that out. Sophia mentions it'd be difficult for me to participate from New Zealand. Well, I will say if you're talking about the hackathon, we're accepting submissions from all over the world. If you're talking about attending Ignite in person, I understand, but would offer the consolation of attending virtually. SB's now reformulated his question. I was wondering what would be the opportunity to participate in another hackathon for Gen AI or Azure Fabric Teams integration use cases. SB, I would say let's be in touch. Reach out to myself and or Jasmine on LinkedIn, because there are things coming. And we'd be more than happy to let you know when and what those will entail. Oh, very interesting use case there. Sophia mentions gather stories over landscapes and have an intergenerational tribal information. Very interesting.
Yeah.
We'd love to see it. And we still have the weekend and Monday.
Exactly. And as we mentioned, like you don't have to have like a full solution built, even just, kind of talking about it in the video and like maybe having just some documentation, like how you could like visualize that could be something to consider.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you all again. We're very excited about all this. Again, this is setting records. We've never seen this many participants. It's mind blowing. And I don't know how we're even, I've got a feeling my Thanksgiving is going to be looking at a lot of cool projects for this hackathon. So looking forward to this. Best of luck to everyone. And I'm going to repeat Jasmine's famous words. Don't forget the deadline.
Thanks, everybody.
Awesome. Cheers, everyone.